All right, let's talk about something big. Something that has, really shaken up the world of military hardware and international alliances. Canada, our neighbor to the north, has made a decision that sent shockwaves from Washington all the way to Brussels. After years, literally decades, of being tied to the American-led F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program, they did a complete 180. They ditched the F-35. Instead, they announced they're buying a fleet of shiny new Sweden Gripen E fighter jets from Sweden. This wasn't just a procurement choice. It was a major political statement. A move that has everyone in the defense world talking and scrambling to figure out what it all means. It's a story about promises, price tags, the unique challenges of defending the vast, cold Canadian North. For the longest time, the F-35 seemed like a done deal for Canada. They were one of the original partner nations in the program, investing hundreds of millions of dollars over the years to help develop this so-called fifth-generation marvel of stealth technology. The Canadian military establishment was largely on board, and the pressure from allies, especially the United States, was immense. You can't understand this story without understanding the politics. Plain and simple. The F-35 became a political football in Canada. The previous Conservative government was all in on the jet, championing it as the only aircraft capable of meeting Canada's future needs. But they were hammered by the opposition, a lot, for a lack of transparency on the true, full life cycle cost of the planes. The sticker price was one thing, but the cost to fly, maintain, upgrade over several decades was a whole other, much scarier number. The whole thing started to smell like a blank check, and the Canadian public did not like the smell. Enter the Liberal Party, led by Justin Trudeau, who made ditching the F-35 a cornerstone of their campaign platform. They promised an open and transparent competition to replace the aging CF-18S, and they specifically pledged not to buy the F-35. When they won the election, they had a clear mandate from the voters. Sticking with the F-35 would have been seen as a massive betrayal of a core promise. For this government, the decision was as much about maintaining political credibility with its base as it was about military capability. Let's follow the money because in this story, the money trail is everything. The single biggest reason Canada walked away from the F-35 was the staggering, almost unbelievable cost. We're not just talking about the upfront purchase price of the jets. We're talking about the total cost of ownership over their entire 30 to 40-year lifespan. This includes fuel, extensive maintenance, spare parts, software upgrades, pilot training, specialized infrastructure. When Canadian officials started running the real numbers on the F-35, the projections were astronomical, threatening to swallow a huge portion of the entire national defense budget. The F-35 is often called the flying supercomputer. It's incredibly complex. That complexity means it's very, very expensive to keep in the air. Estimates for the F-35's cost per flying hour were consistently much higher than for other jets, including the Gripen. For a country like Canada, which needs its pilots to fly a lot to patrol the second-largest landmass on Earth, those operational costs were a deal-breaker. The government had to ask itself, do we want a small number of super expensive jets that we can barely afford to fly, or a larger fleet of more affordable jets that we can actually use? Saab and the Swedish government came to the table with a very different proposition. The Gripen E was designed from the ground up to be effective but also affordable. Beyond the money and politics, there was a strong practical argument for the Gripen E, and it can be summed up in one word: Arctic. Canada is an Arctic nation, and defending its sovereignty in the far north is a top, if not the top, priority for its military. This isn't like flying missions over the manicured landscapes of Europe or the deserts of the Middle East. The Arctic is a harsh, unforgiving environment, vast distances, extreme cold, and very little infrastructure. You need an aircraft that is tough, reliable, and easy to maintain in austere conditions. And on that front, the Gripen E made a very compelling case for itself. The Gripen was literally born for this kind of work. Sweden, its home country, has a similar focus on rugged, dispersed operations in cold weather. The jet is designed to operate from small, makeshift airfields, even snow-covered highways. So you've heard the names, but what's the actual difference between these two jets? Let's break it down in simple terms. Think of the F-35 Lightning II as the luxury, high-performance supercar of the fighter jet world. It has one defining feature that everyone talks about: stealth, nearly invisible to enemy radar, able to sneak into heavily defended territory, to take out targets deep inside enemy airspace. It's packed with an incredible array of sensors that suck up data. Those sensors share data with other friendly forces, making it a flying quarterback for the battlefield. But like a supercar, it's incredibly expensive to buy. It costs a fortune to run, and it spends a lot of time in the shop with specialized mechanics. The Sweden Gripen E, on the other hand, is more like a high-end, all-wheel drive rally car. It might not have the F-35's invisibility cloak of stealth, but it's built to be tough, nimble, and incredibly versatile. As you can imagine, the moment this decision was announced, the reaction was immediate. It was loud. Headlines and footage exploded across newsrooms. The government presented the choice as a major victory for common sense and for Canadian taxpayers. The Prime Minister and the Minister of Defense held a press conference. They lauded the Gripen E as the right plane for Canada at the right price. They emphasized jobs, they emphasized technology, they framed it as a win for the economy and for the military. The opposition parties, especially the Conservatives who had long championed the F-35, were furious. They said the decision weakens Canada's military. They warned it jeopardizes Canada's alliance with the United States. Their narrative, political motives over national security. Military experts and analysts were split. Some applauded fiscal restraint and practical focus. They said the Gripen E is a capable 4.5 generation fighter. This decision wasn't made in a bubble. It has sent significant ripples across Canada's most important alliances, especially its relationship with the United States. For Washington, this is a blow. The United States invested monumental sums of money. Publicly, polite diplomatic statements from the State Department and Pentagon. Privately, frustration and disappointment in the halls of power. The biggest practical concern is NORAD. Now, for the first time, the primary interceptors will be completely different aircraft from different manufacturers. Within NATO, the effect is more nuanced. Canada's choice isolates it somewhat from this core F-35 group. Canada's move has cracked open a market that was becoming an F-35 monopoly. It may create short-term friction with Washington, but it signals alliance unity doesn't require identical equipment. Other sovereign nations will be watching closely. In future NATO operations, Canadian fighters may have different roles. Air defense, while F-35s handle high-risk stealth strikes. For the men and women of the Royal Canadian Air Force, this decision marks the beginning of a profound transformation. This means a complete overhaul of training tactics maintenance procedures. It's a massive undertaking, but also an exciting one for a new generation of pilots. The Air Force can afford to fly more hours. More flying hours means more proficient pilots and higher morale. As we look to the horizon, the dawn of the Gripen era for Canada represents a significant fork in the road. This decision will define the country's defense posture and its place in the world for the next 40 years. By choosing the Sweden Gripen E, Canada is betting on a future where practicality, affordability, sovereign control are paramount. But in their ability to reliably patrol the vastness of the Canadian North, it is clear that Canada has chosen to fly its own course, confidently and decisively, into the future.